What's up, everybody? It's Alistair, and welcome to Headspace, where I sit back and appreciate some of my shows a little more than usual, or a lot more. And today we're doing The Last of Us, episode 4, titled Please Hold to My Hand. And if you could take a second to press that like and subscribe just because we both like The Last of Us. But while I'm thinking about the whole episode and what was happening, it seemed like just a nice break episode I'm just now starting to get familiar with. And this show and a few other ones I've been watching. At this point, the directors are clever enough to know that they've milked enough woes and yikes from all of us, even if it's just a thing that the scriptwriters wrote in and they just kind of got after the fact. They give us a break emotionally from reacting for us to have all the correct emotional responses to have at our sides for the action sequences that will have purpose and lead somewhere. So far, it hasn't been like some random arbitrary stuff. It's leading you to this thought process to where you can put in parts of a story that you would want, but it's only so suggestive that it's still with their storytelling. Like when Joel's like, you don't want to know. Or in this episode, Joel says they'll do other stuff to us. I immediately went oh, do they do human trafficking here? Or forced labor? So if someone dies, it won't be just a random faceless person. It will lead somewhere. Last episode they did a big arching story, but it only went through one episode. It's almost like they did the whole creation process with it fully developed, going through the whole show, and then one person's fairly developed story kind of being practiced with everybody. Almost like they kind of felt bad and they wanted to include it anyway. Like the prompt or the goal was oh yeah, things we can kind of broadly do, like the hope within despair kind of a thing. Like in the second episode, it was oh yeah, they kind of had a peaceful outing going through Boston, Tess, Joel and Ellie, despite there being a whole apocalyptic thing happening all around them. And then the third episode had Frank and Bill's thing where it's oh yeah, they found some maybe romance, but definitely something to live for. But hope and despair. It's kind of making the best out of everything and laughing stuff off, had a theme baby together. In this, you'll find Ellie kind of trying to add to her curiosity with this joke book. It's kind of like one of those self help books, or kind of like one of those magazines, but it's for younger people, in that kind of realm. She's trying to add to her personality. It's supposed to be adding humor to her. And it's definitely something that's missing through most people nowadays in The Last of Us. Even in usual or unusual spots. And Joel for a while thinks it's completely unnecessary and he's just why would you even consider that? But let's get into actually talking about the episode. I don't want to go out of order, but forgive me if I do. It kind of preserves me just regurgitating what happened in the show. And I'm just letting you know now. It's oh, I noticed. And we're getting started with that because the joke book part's right up there at the front. She's checking out her guns, cool. It's a little showy thing. It's pew pew, look at all the stuff I can do, but it's completely necessary now. It's not when you see a little pump action rifle and the kid wants it because there's adults with this similar looking thing. It's still a little kid thing, but it's I could help so good with this now. I was like, pew, 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 pew. She's like, even like, oh, heck, I even made the bullet fly out of there like it does. I can even imagine her just going like, oh, I should have caught it like people do. Four in the clip and one coming out of the chamber or something. She's almost just like checking out her muscles in the mirror. But then eventually she leaves the gas station where she's having that private moment to the outside of another gas station where Joel's siphoning gas out. Joel's kind of like held up at the car that he's siphoning the gas out of, like not wanting Ellie to wander around. So Ellie like tries to come up with her own consequences of Joel's rules and tries to assault him with the joke book. And the joke book's called No Pun Intended, Volume 2 with the TOO Volume 2 by Will Livingston. I bring up the magazine thing because like I would guess that she like had her pick from like mountains of reading material and none of it like catching her attention or being understandable for her, but this joke book. If you ever subscribe to a magazine subscription thing, like there's like mountains of magazines like at certain places unless you like recycle them, and they're like enough money to where you wouldn't want to throw them away. It's like close to the amount of money you would spend on a new or popular book. So I just thought it was funny that she picked up this joke book when there's probably like a lot of like other magazines for her to scope out the maybes of before the infection pandemic life. Like she doesn't want to know that. That's not specific enough for her. But still being a little pragmatic, she wants to get something she could use. Because periodically you'll see her like reading it or studying it. Later, like she's like sleeping and she's like reading it like it's a little book before lit class or the discussion in English class, and then she's reading past the assigned reading. Like the joke books got her attention like that. And as a young person, she's like trying to bring a original thing to her area that she's in. Like psychologically speaking, like kids and young people just do that anyway. Maybe it's just to have their own thing for where they wouldn't get bothered or questioned. The other adults or other young people don't know about it or don't know about it yet. But she's already doing like a few of the steps and like letting Joel in on it. And it's like something that he will not do unless I guess she's there. But as a recipient of many of these moments, it's nice to see if you like don't travel too much or get to see that many different people. You get a sampling of other things happening in the world or what could be happening in this case. But the only other thing she's like looking at in here is the map. It's kind of funny thinking about the joke book and the map being interchangeable. She's not like full on like, it's like, what about that? And like having the joke book where the map is, but Joel has been like trying to like navigate her to thinking or behaving a certain way. And just before like I don't on purpose or accidentally mention it later, at the end like there's like a, oh, you're not so smart after all, huh? As she's like doing that now at the beginning of the episode where she's like asking about how the siphoning works for the gas from the car. Joel flips through like a few like science words. He's like, pressure, gravity. It just works, okay? Like Joel just said, I saw the picture and I don't know what explaining words go with it. But Ellie just goes, ha, got you. Then catches him with the joke book. Also trying to like learn about Joel, like maybe emotionally or his personality. Like right now it's like, okay, Joel's definitely like a series of actions. Let's see if Joel's like about them jokes. But it kind of looks like Ellie's just like, okay, well, he doesn't find that acceptable right now and does not want to drop the seriousness for a little bit. And while they're driving, apparently, like, the everyone's history or the US's history is his history too. So, because Joel doesn't keep anything that's not related to him in his head. Ellie's almost trying to, like, carbon date Joel or, like, out him as a not old person. She's almost like trying to be like what she thinks he was like when he was like a little kid. It's like, what? Oh no, I want to see a tank. Like half guessing, half like estimating like what Joel would be like in that same mood that she's in. And her guess as him as a 14-year-old. She's like, it's so easy. It's like, oh, come on. Like, no one's like this with me. It's like such an easy thing to do. Come on, be bored with me. You're so entertained with nothing. Not even by nothing. With nothing. But the whole car ride to Kansas City, Ellie can't get a rise out of Joel in like anything. Eventually, they go far enough and they like go off road to park in the woods somewhere to camp out, and it goes back to Joel mode where he's just like plan, do this, and then careful about whatever. And he lays down his paranoia for like other people outside the QZ, and he shows like, oh yeah, you're outside the QZ, but there's that where the people are trying to steal from you. There's the QZ where there's obvious rules where they all have to follow, but it kind of looks like they're like overly oppressing you slash overlooking you. Or there's like the outside world where you get to be free and individual, but there's like no guaranteed safety. But there's like a obvious threat that everyone's using, and the rules are after the fact, but it's just to stay alive or thriving. And I guess there's the Fireflies where it's like kind of supposed to be in between there, where the main thing is where you get choices for stuff. It's like I could take this into my own hands and get the safety, or be there where the people I know personally I have access to and everything. And probably I could go start my own wing of the Firefly somewhere, supposedly. The Firefly part, I'm just kind of assuming they haven't showed it too much yet, but we're getting there. But they lay down to sleep in their sleeping bags, and I guess Joel's concern wins the battle, and it kind of doesn't seem like he sleeps through the whole night entirely. Because after Ellie, you're kind of supposed to assume that Joel gets up, kind of like does patrol a little bit, or just like stares out into the darkness. He keeps doing this thing where it's like he kind of does and doesn't want to be around people more like him, like survival people. But then like it kind of doesn't seem like he could trust them if they are more like him. It's probably like a little bit of relief where Ellie's like doing like the worst things, but still pretty wholesome things to the moment. They're the worst things for preparation, and wholesome where it keeps like Joel's and Ellie's ideals like circulating. But then there's like a geography thing with me where it's like, oh yeah, that kind of looks like Worlds of Fun when they showed like the roller coaster. It was like, oh no, like I think that's supposed to be Six Flags in Missouri. After I had seen the I-35 sign for the highway, when Ellie's done asking about Tommy and she wakes up, they're like almost near a underpass. There's the highway sign for I-35 Wichita and I-35 for Des Moines, Iowa. It's like, oh, that's cool. Stuff I recognize. Even the skyline after that scene's like a little similar to the buildings there in Kansas City. Definitely the tan one. So I was also enjoying the part where there's that steel bridge and there's like the turned over like ships from before they got there. I was wondering how many layers that was. If I was whoever that was, I'd probably like make a skyline screensaver or like a aging bridge screensaver. It just like slowly decaying or like buildings appearing and disappearing. That seems like a fun thing to know how to do. But oh yeah, what I was going to say is like I guess they made the whole drive there in a day pretty much. Probably with the fact that there's a bunch of cars in the way to about Kansas City. And it again makes me wonder which person in this script writers or screenplay people or the directors have been road tripping across the United States before. It's like, oh man, that was strangely accurate. They can't even really go like 60 miles per hour in certain spots, or even faster sometimes in other spots of the highway. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm still noticing the obvious things that they're like setting out there for us to see, like the Guys magazine about guys, and the whole discussion about how determined Joel is to get to Wyoming, and the whole discussion prompted by Ellie, where it's like, oh, like, what would you live for? Like, and Joel's like, family, and the fact that he immediately, like, set the bar straight with Ellie that she's, like, cargo. She has no comment, finally, about something, but we'll see how long he feels about that. It's kind of like your uncle or grandpa just saying, like, you're a brat and you're, like, a perfect little angel, I imagine. Like, for some reason, that's just, like, how people talk. Be it for protection or just, like, keeping it the way that it always sounds. Just so you can know what changes it or makes the difference. But eventually, Joel decides it's not safe enough and tries to find a way around. Not only is he determined, but he's going to be absolutely certain that wherever he chooses is going to be super safe. And he's going to be careful about everything. But that's where Ellie's curiosity and need to see certain things saves them from this ambush from being a little worse. Because she spots the QZ zone for Kansas City, and the gate's like wide open. But this is where it kind of like goes along like other average like horror movies or apocalypse movies, because you're like, oh, what? Why didn't Joel just like turn around or like do a put it in reverse? But it's the suspension of disbelief moment. But eventually, this little "please help me" ambush leads them into getting into the middle of a laundromat very quickly with the truck. And a lot of stuff happens here, but there's three guys, and really you just need to see it. I don't want to take away from it, and I don't know how to describe it completely, but Ellie sees some agony of people, but it's not like broad enough to where it's just like, oh, this is happening everywhere. It's just like, oh, man, that guy really could have chose to do anything else, and this wouldn't have happened, but she gets to use the gun and stuff. Joel, one by one, deals with the oncoming threat of these people wanting their stuff. And I'm not sure how to put this delicately, but as one's trying to barter and bargain about the outcome, mentions his mom and how Joel and Ellie should take him to her. You think maybe this is like a little gang and or something? Maybe the Fireflies, or even a gang trying to be the Fireflies. And Joel being who he is, and this person not even being cargo, changes the need of him needing to convince him of taking him anywhere. Right as this backup arrives, uh, Joel and Ellie have to leave the truck and find a place to hide away from these people. And then that's when we first meet a woman named Kathleen, most likely the mother of the Brian guy. You don't really learn too much, but you get to see what their life is like. She's trying to press or squeeze some information out of this doctor they have there that has known Kathleen since birth. But she's looking for a few people, but she's mainly focused on Henry after she finds out what happened to her three helpers. And she seems to have somehow gotten control of the Fedra area and is in charge of a lot of people from there, or at least living around in that area. And so starts the line of thought of what happened in Kansas City to where this happens. But she has enough people to scour Kansas City looking for Henry because they don't know about Joel and Ellie. They just assume it's this Henry fella and how something upscaled his like plans or his desperation. You're just supposed to take away all the sides and members of certain groups and what everyone's like after. So if you can picture a map and then picture a generic city layout on the map, there's Kathleen's group, which populates most of the map, and they control Kansas City. They're all in red. Somehow they're all mapped there. Then in the middle, probably there's like a blue Henry question mark with his son. And then you're following Ellie and Joel's like green little line trying to like avoid the red dots. It kind of seems like there's some sort of territory war right now where they kind of just like hunt down dissenters and keep influence in the areas that they have. But the odds doesn't seem to favor Henry or Joel and Ellie. They mentioned like five other pairs of people, at least. I don't know if they have like some sort of password or access to something that the people that took over the Fedra area want, but it's important enough to like where they're going out of the way to go find Henry right now. But in reality, they're accidentally hunting for Joel and Ellie. But while Joel and Ellie are regrouping in a building somewhere, they're in a little like red rundown storefront. Joel's staying vigilant, but he kind of like slowly like lets Ellie know that he trusts her now because while he did tell her to leave and stay away until it was safe, she came out and shot one of the attackers and saved Joel because he was still a little weary from not sleeping too much. I don't know if that was a thing before or it's because lately he doesn't have tests anymore. And he just drove like however many hours, at least like 2 12-hour like shifts of driving. But one of them gets the surprise jump on him. And then Ellie shot him to get him off and away from Joel. Like after that, he like changed everything. He's like actually looking at Ellie, even though she's not like doing anything like worrisome. Hands back the gun that he took from her at the moment whenever she used it last. He's probably being safe. Maybe that's how he got the scar on his face that he was being asked about by Ellie. And then he shows her how to use a gun, and he's not like giving her this tone, but he's now acting like someone's got his back again. Like all of his like body language changed, and he's like turning his back on her, not like shunning her, but it's like, oh well, I know you're on my side now. That was a pretty gnarly thing to do, but he's still like trying to like stay ahead of the people searching just apartments right now from the taken over Fedra building in Kansas City. But eventually, he does some teamwork with Ellie to get through a little vent to get inside of a 45-story building, 42, so they could get to the roof and like survey the area. That seems to be his like urban survival method, like what they were doing with the hotel, but the hotel was like halved and broken open. And so they get into the stairwell and try to trek all the way up 40 flights of stairs. But Joel, he knows he's not going to make it, so I think they said he got to 32 stories before finally, like, he decided to give up the trek up the stairs. And I doubt he's in an apartment building, so it kind of looks like he bashes his way through to get into someone's office to sleep for the night. And just before the episode closes, Ellie hits her with the best. Hey, Joel, did you know diarrhea is hereditary? And Joel's like, what? Like, I didn't ever shit my pants in what just happened. And Ellie finishes the punchline with, it runs in your genes. And it gets Joel to like chuckle for a second. And just for a moment, it's like a sleepover, or like your brother and sister are just kind of like laying in the living room with the pillow fort or something. And they're like cracking up. He's like, man, Joel's just like, oh man, you're stupid. Like, that's stupid. It's like, but I made you laugh. And he's just like, yeah, right. That wasn't a laugh. Come on, stop that. As he like chuckles himself into like a slumber. But unfortunately, this man like does not get some normal rest. I doubt like he got used to thinking that he could just go to sleep normal. But he wakes up to Ellie like going like, Joel, Joel. And he opens his eyes and there's like a man with a gun, and then a young boy with a face paint, and this kid's holding a gun too, and shoots him. I don't remember the end of the Lord of the Flies, but I'm pretty sure Joel just got Lord of the Flies. I don't know if they'll form a little group eventually, but this kind of seems like it's Henry and his son. It kind of seems like they want you to think like whoever's going to be in charge is going to only be put there to be deposed. Maybe it's this kid's like face paint, but that's just what I'm saying right now. And we got our first like to be continued. They were really like spoiling us before, like where they got like all the suspense and like emotional like amplitude. They didn't leave us hanging, but at least this time it will be calm enough for most people nowadays. Where before, like, the anticipation for the next episode would ruin your week or like relationships in between then and the next episode. But also that thing where it's like, oh, don't you want to like talk about it? It's like, no, I can wait. Like, but then there's the other half where it's like, I can't wait. Like, we need to like talk about this now. Like, I need to like tap this out somehow. This is all I'm gonna be thinking about for 168 hours. But that's like where the people in the production of the show will be like, good. Like, the next episode will feel just right then. Like the episode one conclusion was like, okay, well, but there was like enough for me to not wonder what's gonna happen. Like you kind of knew, and then the episode two one was like, oh man, that was heavy. Like I was starting to like this, and then the Bill and Frank thing, like you didn't know like that was gonna happen exactly, but there's like three or four ones like you were kind of like, okay, well they're gonna do this, but you didn't even like bother thinking it. But now in this episode 4 one, the please hold to my hand. You're like, oh, what? Why did they stop there? Like, is Joel kicking himself right now? Cause the glass thing, or is that why he doesn't laugh? And why is Kathleen hating so hard? Like, they got us in like a little groove for us to expect certain things already. Like the 3 episodes that passed. And now they're holding out on us. But I know this big build will be worth it, so I will stop there with the to be continued rant. So that was the Last of Us episode 4. Please hold to my hand review. But if you're liking what's happening, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Let us know. I'm sure someone very proud of their work will find it and read it. It'll be worth the mention. And then hit that like and subscribe because you found something out. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. And thanks for giving Headspace a listen. And I'll see you next time. It could have been like just me that wanted to keep going, right? But hey, you look good. And it shows.